Preparing for coronavirus and a big week for Democrats. Joining us on Columbus on the Record this week, Jackie Borchert, Columbus Bureau Chief for the Cincinnati Enquirer, Darrell Rowland, Public Affairs Editor for the Columbus Dispatch, Dale Butland, Democratic strategist, and Bob Clegg, Republican strategist. Coronavirus, or COVID-19, has not hit Ohio, but state officials say it's probably just a matter of time before it does. They say hospitals and public health agencies are ready.
All Ohioans must have a sense of urgency about this emerging health threat.
This is something we really are prepared for. Infectious diseases are something we know. And even when there's a new infectious disease, they are predictably unpredictable.
Until it hits, there's not much the state can do, but the governor still has a multi-part plan, as is his fashion. It includes posting information at rest areas, of increasing use of disinfectants and hand sanitizers in prisons and state buildings, urging colleges and universities to follow CDC guidelines and prohibit travel to affected countries, and to take steps to identify and help vulnerable older adults. Bob Clegg, this really is, I mean, Mike DeWine said all the right things. He's doing the right things, but there's really nothing he or anyone else can do.
I mean, you gotta just kind of, you gotta wait and see what happens. The problem we have with this is the two areas where we've had large outbreaks, China and Iran, are both closed societies. And, you know, they have happy news 24/7. So you really don't know how bad the situations were in either of those two countries. So we're kind of going blindly here, waiting to see, you know, how bad is this thing? Is this going to be a kind of virus that dies out when warmer weather comes? Maybe not. I mean, we just don't know enough about it yet.
I mean, the governor, basically it was a public information announcement. Wash your hands, wash the surfaces on your countertops, and that's all they can do right now.
Yeah, but I think he needed to say something, though, because this issue has become such a big, pervasive issue in the news. I mean, any news source, really, it's top of the news cycle every day, it seems. And so I think people are kind of wondering, well, you know, what is happening in Ohio? Are we ready? And, you know, our leaders should probably be telling us at least that they, you know, that they think we are ready.
Because there's a lot of misinformation out there, some people comparing it to the common cold, which of course it is not. I saw a 5-minute video earlier today that was produced by the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, that's really good. It's only 5 minutes long. It explains in layman's terms what the virus is, where it came from, how it works inside our bodies, and what we can best do to protect ourselves. So I urge everyone to go online and see that video. It's really good.
Where is the line, Darrell, between providing good quality information and potentially scaring people and causing a panic?
Well, in this case, you know, we in the media, as well as those in public officials in government, are in some ways struggling with the same issues. You know, I think Governor DeWine looked really good in comparison to perhaps some federal officials who were speaking to this issue or attempting to, by being calm but very forthright. And that key reminder, you know, the flu is going to take out a lot more people, most likely, than this virus. But it has a name. It's scary. There's so much unknown we don't know. So, yeah. So how much do you get out there? As Jackie says, you know, we follow which stories are most popular with our readers. Yep. And those are off the chart. But I think people are eager to know because there is the fear, there is unknown. So we just try to help people as much as we can, give them tips. Again, some of them, you know, wash your hands. That just seems like a no-duh.
A lot of people don't wash their hands, though. You go into a public bathroom. I'm like amazed at how many people. No, they don't even like shake off. They just
no, I didn't mean that. I meant,
I meant drying their hands, doing the whole process.
I meant we all shake hands as well. That's something that we have to watch. But you know, Darrell, one of the things is about this, from what I've been reading, the flu, as you say, is bad, but this is 2 to 3 times more contagious than the flu. And because this is a new virus and nobody has any immune system for it, the antibodies, even if the death rate is only 2%, if you're talking about a pandemic here, where it gets into the bodies of lots and lots of people. 2% of what do we have, 7 billion people in the world? That's a lot of folks.
Yeah, the stakes are so enormous, and
Yeah.
you know, clarity is essential, I think. And you know, and we talk about certain folks. Mick Mulvaney just was that today or yesterday? I think today talks about how this is all a plot by the Democrats and the news media to hurt President Trump, trying to warn people about certain things. So I'm glad the Republican on the panel is laughing too. You know, there's a lot of crazy stuff going out there. And I guess we should expect this is the age of disinformation. Why should it be confined to political or election issues?
Russian stuff coming over.
Well, this is part of the plot to get Bernie in the White House.
Yes.
But Bob, everything's political these days, even viruses.
Well, and this
public
is
health.
and this is the problem. Unfortunately, in politics, we have an arsenal of things, and one of them is the politics of fear. I mean, we did it to President Obama on Ebola. They're going to try to do it on coronavirus with President Trump. I think everybody just needs to stay calm. And like I said, until we know more information, which we will. I mean, we're in a country where we do get information. So until we know exactly what we're dealing with, we're just going to have to wait and see.
I don't think any reasonable person would say that Donald Trump is responsible for this virus. But there are two ways that this could hurt him. Number one, if the public becomes convinced that he botched the response to the thing, kind of like George W. Bush with Katrina. Nobody blamed him for the hurricane, but we botched the response. So that's one way. The other way is, if this continues to wreak havoc with the market and the ancillary economic benefits through disruptions to the global supply chain and so forth, if that takes down the economy, pushes the economy into a recession, that could redound to his detriment, because poll after poll has shown that the economy is the only thing that's keeping Trump afloat.
Or this could end up being like Russian collusion and nothing. We don't know yet.
Yeah. And let's hope it's nothing, I guess.
Yeah.
Do you see Ohio ever shutting down communities like we saw in Italy? I mean, can you ever see an American government agency saying, all right, well, this neighborhood in this suburb, it's been spotted, you can't leave.
Campuses being shut down. I could see the state of Ohio coming in saying, like, Ohio State campus is shut down.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can shut down a city.
Schools shut down when there's, a bad case of the flu or some other illness. I remember, like swine flu, for example. Like a lot of schools that where they had most of their population was out sick. It was one, let's just, we don't have enough students, let's shut down. But two, let's disinfect this whole building and make sure that we are ready to get back to business.
And that's some of the other things the governor and the health director were talking about yesterday. Disinfecting where you can, state prisons, things like that, where you have closely compacted humanity. You talk about, obviously, much lower scale, but on the cruise ships, it's still the same principle, confined people. Yeah. Somebody gets it, it will spread so easily.
Yeah, Clorox bleach stock was way up this week. Not surprisingly, I guess, when you think about it. Anyway, the next few days could go a long way towards telling us which Democrat will take on President Trump, or the next few days could be a sign we're headed for a long nomination process. Joe Biden guaranteed a win in South Carolina, but other candidates are working hard to prove him wrong. Bernie Sanders seems to be closing in on Biden there. The Democratic divisions were on full display at this week's debate, where Sanders drew the most attacks.
Bernie and I agree on a lot of things, but I think I would make a better president than Bernie.
I am not looking forward to a scenario where it comes down to Donald Trump with his nostalgia for the social order of the 1950s and Bernie Sanders with the nostalgia for the revolutionary politics of the 1960s.
Misconception, and you're hearing it here tonight, is that the ideas I'm talking about are radical. They're not. In one form or another, they exist in countries all over the world.
But Sanders is seen as a radical by some in his own party. The New York Times reports leading Democrats won't rule out the possibility of denying Sanders the nomination if he does not win a majority of delegates at the convention, even floating the idea of drafting Sherrod Brown as the nominee at the convention. Deb Beltman, we'll get to Sherrod Brown in a moment, but how do you see the next few days playing out? South Carolina and Super Tuesday.
Well, all eyes this weekend are going to be on South Carolina, because that's the moderate candidates or the moderate wing's last chance to slow Bernie down before you get into Super Tuesday. It only works if Biden wins in South Carolina, which I fearlessly predict here on your show he will not only do, but he's going to win big. And now the question then becomes, if he does that, will there be spillover into the Super Tuesday states, particularly states like Texas, North Carolina, Virginia, that are delegate rich and where recent polls have shown Bernie and Biden running neck and neck? So that's going to be the question, but I hope he does. But look, if the moderate wing of the Democratic Party does not coalesce around one person pretty soon, the left has coalesced around Bernie, which is why he's winning primaries with 25–30% of the vote. Unless the moderate wing does the same thing, Bernie's going to be able to pile up delegates and arrive at the convention with a plurality, if not a majority, and cruise to the nomination.
This sounds familiar, Bob.
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
Do moderate Republicans have any advice for moderate Democrats this time around after watching Trump in 2016?
I think it's going to end up the same way because of the same problems. Where the worst case scenario for Democrats, I believe, is Joe Biden winning by a big margin this Saturday in South Carolina, because what's going to happen is Bloomberg and Biden are splitting that non-Bernie vote. I can't call it moderate. I'm sorry. I know your party has gone so far to the left that Joe Biden's considered now a moderate.
Well, and
I'm not going to call
Trump
him
is
that.
everybody looks moderate.
But anyway, they're split. I mean, the anti-Bernie vote is split. And one or the other should have dropped out last week to avoid what's going to happen. Bernie's going to rack up a ton of delegates on Tuesday, mainly because of California. Yep. That in itself is going to give him a ton, plus all the other states that he's working, like Colorado and areas like that. So he's going to have a plurality going into the convention. Now, the Democrats are saying, we don't care. This is not good. We're going to make sure that he doesn't become the nominee. If they do that, you saw what happened in 2016, where he went in and he didn't even have the plurality. Hillary did. He didn't. And they felt like he got screwed over. And 12% of Bernie supporters voted for Trump. If they do that this year to him, that number is going to double.
Wait a minute, Bob. The rules we have now are the rules that Bernie wanted after 2016.
Yeah, but he's changed that.
No, what do you mean he's changed? You can't
On
keep
the
changing.
debates, he said,
Now,
if you're
now he
the
wants
candidate with a plurality,
Now that he
you should
looks
get the
at
I
nomination.
understand.
That's your problem.
I understand he wants to change
That's
the rules
your
again.
problem.
No, it's not a problem,
This
Bob.
is something a lot like the
Follow-
debate. Can we all
follow-
talk at once? Just
follow-
recreate it?
Following
Riveting
the,
stuff.
following the rules is not a problem. What the rule says is that if you don't have a majority after the first ballot, okay, then on the second ballot, pledged delegates, are free to change their mind.
And superdelegates.
And
can vote.
superdelegates can
The
can,
party
can,
bosses can come in and dictate who the nominee
We're
is.
also talking about pledged delegates who can change
Yeah,
their minds.
but I'm talking about the party
But
bosses,
that's the way-
700
But that's
and
not a
some.
brokered convention. That's following the rules.
But Bernie
Yeah.
supporters, Bob's point,
Yeah,
will be
my
mad.
point. And here's your problem with Bernie supporters, Dale. Back in the old days that you and I remember, you know, you would have these primary fights, and then everybody would join together for the good of that nominee. Because you know what? We were all members of that party. Bernie supporters, not all of them, but a big chunk of them, I would even guess a majority of them, are not Democrats, and they never have been. They're socialists. Yeah. So what they want to do is they want to take your party and they want to blow it up. Yeah. Because they want to take it over. And the way they blow it up is by ensuring that whoever is the nominee that's not Bernie loses.
Do we know, Jackie or Daryl, how we're a week and a half now, it's almost 2 weeks into early voting here in Ohio, so people are casting ballots as this is all going on. Do we have any idea how Bernie and Joe Biden are doing here? There's no polling, really, we've seen.
Well, right, and of course you don't know
Yeah.
who's supporting whom until election night when the early votes are counted first. I did get some stats from the Franklin County Board of Elections in terms of the turnout, and Democratic turnout is way up. Now, okay, it's kind of the only game in town with Trump being unopposed, so some of that's natural, but it's almost triple. So I'm not sure that explains it all. So, and then, you know, there was a competitive primary here before. Yeah. Hillary beat Bernie and kept, you know, helped pave Hillary's way to the nomination. So this could be a very friendly state to a Joe Biden, maybe a Michael Bloomberg. He spent a lot of money. Yeah. He's aired a lot of ads in this state. As Bob knows, Bernie Sanders ads are going up right after Super Tuesday. Elizabeth Warren is starting ads. They're going to be out this weekend. campaigning. So Ohio is, hey, we're just around the corner. Candidates could be here as soon as Tuesday night or Wednesday.
I want to say something here because part of what Bob said before, I actually agree with. History shows that when our party elects presidents, when we nominate somebody from the center left. When we go far left, like with George McGovern or with Walter Mondale, we lose in a landslide. I believe that removing President Trump from office is the moral imperative of our time. And whoever wins the nomination, I will support with every fiber of my being. But I will tell you that when Bernie Sanders talks about a total ban on fracking, he is not serious about winning Pennsylvania. Or
Ohio.
Even Ohio, for that matter. When he talks about the bright side of the Castro the Castro regime, he isn't serious about winning Florida. When he says stuff like that, he's not trying to win an election, he's trying to win an argument. And I have been doing politics in this state for 4 decades, and I've known a lot of Democrats who would rather be right than win, and they usually get their wish.
Sherrod Goldwater sounds like.
Sherrod Brown, I mean, his name has gotten mentioned again as sort of like the messiah who would come in and save the convention. Is there any indication that he even wants that, Jackie?
Stop trying to make Sherrod happen. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, he hasn't, I guess this week, the New York Times story mentioned it. He released a statement not saying no, absolutely not, but not saying yes, absolutely yes. So, leaving the door open. John Kasich has left the door open for several years. So, it's a political, it's still open. Right. I don't know what for, but it's still open.
The door's still open? Okay.
If someone asked me to be the next president, sure, I'm open to that. So I don't think so. And I think that kind of scenario of having Sherrod Brown or anybody else come in at that stage in the game would be way more chaos than even just going to a second ballot. And that just...
I mean, logistically, he doesn't have a campaign.
No.
At least the folks who are running have campaign operations in place. This person would be starting from scratch. Party would help him, I'm sure, but still.
And my favorite response to that whole idea this week came from Sherrod Brown's wife, Connie Schultz, a journalist and columnist, and it was just, what? Like,
All of us love to talk about brokered conventions. The truth is, neither party's had one since 1952, okay? They just don't happen.
Part of the cycle of
fun to talk about
during campaigns. Anyway, here in Central Ohio, Democrat Joyce Beatty seems to be taking nothing for granted in her primary campaign. The popular 4-term incumbent faces a challenge from newcomer Morgan Harper, who comes from the far left of her party. Beatty is running TV ads, digital ads. Voters see her on her face on billboards all over the district. Harper has raised a decent amount of money and claims the same type of grassroots support that fueled Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's surprise win in New York 2 years ago. Darrell Rowland, I mean, Joyce Beatty has to be the favorite here, but she's not running like the favorite. She's running her hardest campaign since she won the seat to begin with.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Since she took this seat after the 3rd District was created in its current form for the 2012 election, this is by far, but it's the most serious threat. And I think most people know this, but we should say whoever wins the Democratic primary goes to Washington because there's so few Republicans in the 3rd Congressional District, which is inside of Columbus. But she, everyone probably has seen her on TV. When's the last time you saw a Joyce Beatty TV ad? She hasn't had to do it. I think she's probably doing the right thing from her standpoint. So it'll be up to Morgan Harper. She doesn't have the kind of the incumbent Congresswoman's money. Does she have that energy of, as you said, an AOC, that type of movement? And interesting, we have people wanting to be Trump maybe in Bob's party, and Dale's party, we have people wanting to be AOC and those folks, an attack from the left. It's an interesting gambit. Interesting to see what happens in a very blue district.
Jackie, I would assume that she would like to see Bernie Sanders stay leading or very competitive through the March 17th, the actual primary, because those are her voters, the Green New Deal folks, the Medicare for All folks.
Yeah, absolutely. And, she has said that she's hoping to bring out a lot of millennial voters and that those are millennial voters are, more in tune with those policies. But millennial voters are not as a reliable block as older voters. And so we will see what happens, but it's very possible that Bernie having some momentum coming into Ohio's primary will help drive traffic for him, and more likely than for Morgan Harper.
I may be the only one at the table who actually did his homework that Mike assigned, and I actually listened to the whole radio interview that Ann Fisher did. And I will tell you that Morgan Harper is an incredibly attractive first-time candidate. She is very bright, extremely bright. She is incredibly articulate, and she has a personal story that is captivating and compelling. The problem is she's running against Joyce Beatty, who has far better name recognition, is almost an institution, she and her husband in this state, in this city. Second, Beatty's going to have 2 to 3 times more money than Morgan Harper is. And third, unlike, let's say, AOC's old opponent, Joe Crowley, up in New York, Joyce Beatty hasn't done anything to tick most of the voters off here. She's not been invisible in the district. She's back here all the time. And you're right, she's running from the left as kind of a revolution, asking for revolution. But you know, in a time of relative peace and prosperity, and I use the term relative with regard to the prosperity advisedly, in a time of that, I see no evidence that voters in Central Ohio are looking for a revolution.
Is there looking down the road, is there a redistricting motivation to this race? Does Joyce Beatty have to win big and show she's still the congressperson for the 3rd district? Because they're going to draw the maps again in 2 years, and they're going to look to consolidate districts. If she's shown some weakness in this race, they might cut into her district more than usual.
I don't think so. I don't think she has to worry about that. I actually think Joyce does a great job representing her district. I don't think she needs to worry about that. What she needs to worry about is the socialist takeover of the Democrat Party, which Bernie Sanders, AOC, and Morgan Harper represent. And I think she's smart. I figure she'll spend probably around $400,000 on TV, but I think that she's smart to do it.
Yeah. Our last topic, 5 years after failing, supporters of legalizing recreational marijuana appear ready to try again. As the Cincinnati Enquirer first reported, a coalition that includes some marijuana growers in Ohio is looking to put a legalization amendment on the November ballot. A lot of details remain unknown, but one thing is for sure, it will not be easy. The group needs to collect 450,000 signatures by July 1st just to get on the ballot. Then the campaign would begin. Jackie Borchard, this came out of sort of nowhere. We weren't expecting this for the fall, but it's a possibility.
Yeah, it's a little late. There's certainly enough time if you have the money and the infrastructure to make it happen. And those are two things that we really don't know today. So usually these initiatives come with some support from some national organizations or national funders. And so far they have said that they are not supporting this at this time. Like Marijuana Policy Project, for example, which tried to put a medical measure on in Ohio in 2016. They've said, look, we could come into Ohio or we could go into 6 other states for the same price of Ohio. So that's after 2015 and given the price tag of doing a campaign in Ohio, people look elsewhere.
Does it have a chance of winning if it gets on the ballot? Recreational? No monopolies. That was what killed the last one. It was 10 companies divvying up the pie.
Yeah, I think it has a chance. Now, the last time it was on the ballot 5 years ago, it got crushed. Recreational lost with what I think 64% voted no. I think there's a reasonably good chance that people have changed their minds some on the issue. But I go back to what Jackie was just saying. Ohio is an incredibly expensive place to get something on the ballot. You're talking about millions of dollars just to get the petition signatures, right? Mm-hmm. Now, you also have the medical marijuana growers who already have licenses from the state, and you'd think that they'd all be together on this. They're not. They're split. And the reason is some of the medical marijuana growers are concerned that if you have recreational pot approved here, you're going to crowd out a demand for that will crowd out medical marijuana, as has happened in other states like Illinois. So I think there are a lot of roadblocks to this getting to the ballot. If it actually gets there, depending on how much is spent to get it approved, I think it's got a shot if it gets on the ballot.
It's got a better shot this year than when we did it back in 2015, because it was an odd numbered year. The turnout's not good for it. So they have a shot, but unless you can give regular people something out of it, like, take the tax money and lower everybody's taxes, it's not going to pass.
That's the fees. The other states have used that. I mean, Michigan and Illinois have done it. Massachusetts has it.
Since the vast majority of people that are voting on this will never buy marijuana, you've got to give them something out of it.
All right, let's get to our off-the-record final parting shots. And Bob Clegg, we'll start with you.
I was happy to see today that the Columbus Mayor, Andrew Ginther, is giving back $66,000 to people, vendors, and individuals who did contract work with the city. They had given him $66,000 to pay for his State of the City address, and I guess now it's just going to be taxpayer funds, which I normally don't like, but I prefer that to people getting city contracts paying the mayor money.
Dale.
I fearlessly predict that Joe Biden will win big in South Carolina tomorrow, maybe even in a blowout. But it may not be enough to stop Bernie because unless, as I said earlier, the moderates can coalesce around a single candidate, Bernie can continue to win primaries with 25 to 35% of the vote.
Daryl.
You know, we call it the president and Mick Mulvaney for rhetoric that's, you know, a little bit wild. We should probably do the same for Sherrod Brown, who in his press call this week, noted that the intelligence agency said that, you know, Russia is indeed, again, aiding the president's reelection, along with Senator Sanders. He noted that, but he also said that Trump was cheating in the election. So far, I've not seen any evidence that Trump is a willing recipient or actively involved in this. Anyhow, so let's call him out on both sides.
And Jackie.
Shameless plug. Daryl and I are starting a new political newsletter next week.
All right.
Comes out on Thursdays, and you can sign up. I'll have a link on my Twitter page, but also at dispatch.com on their newsletters page and cincinnati.com on our newsletters page.
Great. Cool. We are very early in the primary season. I did some comparisons. We're at 3% in as far as delegates. So if this was a baseball game, there would be only one out in the top of the first inning. If it was an NBA game, there'd be 10 minutes left to go in the first quarter. A football game, 13 minutes left to go in the first quarter. That'll change after Tuesday, but it's still very early. Check us out online, Facebook, Twitter, and our website, wosu.org, where you can see each episode on demand. For our crew and for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.